Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Gimpy, and
Gimpy's gal.
And we're doing another one of those discussion videos because the last one had, some positive impact and support, and you guys seem to, take to it. And this isn't going to become a regular thing, okay? It's not something I plan on doing. I plan on just sticking with the games. Gimpy's gal's going to keep doing her guesses, but as issues pop up.
Yeah, as things, if something is on our mind or we're talking about it a lot.
Or her mind.
Yeah.
Whatever you're yelling at me about.
Yeah, because I yell all the time.
If we see something that involves gaming, specifically wargaming, and how that's being perceived and how it's being affected in today's world, then we might do a discussion on it. And I wasn't planning on doing another one this quickly, but I saw something online that just tripped my balls out, and I had to take and address it because this stuff is driving me crazy.
It's crazy.
Oh, and yes, I'm in front of the camera this time because last time we were just yapping at each other, and I was setting up the camera to film a game that was, down on the table, so I just hit record and we just kept talking. This time I actually set it up and joined her over here. But this one, obviously from the title, which you guys will have already seen, is history versus inclusivity. All right, accuracy versus what people want it to be. And the big thing right now is the fact that people are trying to change history to make it more diverse.
And I'm here, even though I'm not someone who's like super knowledgeable in these games, and I've admitted before, I don't know a ton of little minute details about history. That's just not something that I, focus a lot of my time and energy on to learn about. He knows a lot about a lot of different histories, like different countries and cultures and things. But I'm more speaking as someone who just kind of enjoys games as a whole, not necessarily just this genre, but I'm speaking almost as like an outsider from like my perspective of it, because I don't play war games. I don't play historically based games usually. So I'm kind of giving an opinion of someone who's kind of on
Shadows of Brimstone isn't historical. They didn't have Cthulhu monsters in the Old West.
I'm just going to give my opinion as someone who's like on the sidelines. Like I see it, I know about it, but I don't necessarily play it. So that's kind of why I'm, why we're both doing this one, because I don't know as much as he does. So I don't want you to think that I'm trying to,
it wouldn't be a discussion.
It's just,
if it was just me, it'd be a monologue of me bitching at the camera for half an hour. This is a discussion.
Well, some people might wonder, why is she here? She doesn't know anything about them. And you're right, I don't. But I do obviously have a husband who is very into them. So when things come up that upset him or make him scratch his head, or as he said, blew your balls off.
Something like that, yeah.
Whatever he said, then it interests me as well. So go ahead.
So what got me, right, is an article I saw, and I commented on it. And it was a game developer talking about how he was wanting to make a game concerning World War II bombers. And he wanted to make it historically accurate. But he was trying to find a way to make it diverse. He wanted to include different ethnicities and genders. And people were commenting on it, and I commented on it, and I made the very specific statement that this is a bad idea. And not to mention that it's insulting to the people who lived through that time. Now, I'm not saying that making a B-17 bomber full of women is insulting to women or history for that specific reason, but hundreds of thousands of women, like I actually did a little research before we sat down to do this, served in World War II in many, many different fields. And I got one I want to talk about specifically as an example, okay? Her name she was Russian, so I'm going to butcher the last name, but Mariah.
Either Mariah or Maria.
I think that's a Mariah. We're going to call her Mariah. Mariah. We're going to call her Mariah Kaya, all right? Because I can't pronounce the last name, and I don't want to try to butcher it.
He'll put it up on the screen so that you know who we're talking about.
All right. Wonderful woman. This woman is badass, okay? I think someone had referenced her, and I looked up her history, and it's awesome, okay? Her husband was killed in Kiev in 1941, and she was working in Russia, working in factories and doing stuff like that, taking care of the home front, during World War II. And when she found out years later, it was 1943, when she found out her husband had been killed, she sold everything she owned and told the Russian government, I will buy a tank and I will donate it back to you on the condition that you let me drive it. She wanted to go to war to avenge her husband, and they let her. She called the tank, I forget the Russian name, but it was Girlfriend's Vengeance. And some people thought it was a publicity stunt for her to be doing that, just trying to get, war bonds and patriotism up. But it wasn't. The girl was badass. She drove her tank straight into the enemy. She took out a bunch of anti-tank guns and pillbox positions. And while their tank would take fire, she was the driver and the mechanic. When it would get damaged in combat, she would get out under fire and repair the tank. And when she fixed it, she'd get back in and she'd keep trucking. And she did that under multiple battles. And she ended up dying, unfortunately, due to enemy fire. Artillery shell caught a fragment in the back of her head, something like that, and put her in a coma for a couple months. And then she ended up passing away. She was awarded, what was that medal? I should have wrote it down. Hero of the Motherlands, like the Russian equivalent of the Medal of Honor, right? Highest medal that you can get. This woman
well deserved,
yeah,
obviously. This
woman is a badass. You want to do a historical war game about women? Do a game about her. There are, and she's just one. Okay, it's not, when people are arguing about this, it's not that they don't want women in war games or they don't want diversity in games. They want you to take, if you're making a historically accurate game,
tell the story correctly.
Be historically accurate, because you're insulting people like Mariah, who really did give everything they had. Literally, she sold everything she had and then gave her life fighting for her country to avenge her, beloved husband. What more do you want? There's everything you could want in a story right there. Tragedy and romance and vengeance and drama, everything. Why are people like her? I'd never heard of her. Okay,
that would make an amazing movie too. Like, I would love to see a movie on that.
And that's
an incredible story.
That's just a one-off. You had the Wasp, and I forget all the other different names. I looked it up. There, so many different countries had women involved in multiple different facets.
But it's not even just about, like you said, it's not that people don't want women or different cultures or races in historically based games. But if it's historically based, then it needs to be based on history. And I was just thinking of something in my head, and it just right out. Oh, what was I going to say?
What was it about?
It was about what we were talking about, but it was about, okay. A lot of people get upset that there are specific war games and battle games where women are not, on the front lines, and they're not represented how they feel they should be based on their feelings today. So how people, believe men and women are equal, and I'm not even going to get into that, but, people are basing what they think about history and how they want those games to be portrayed or those stories to be told based on how they feel today. But women did play an important role in so much of it. And it's not just because they stayed home and took care of the kids.
But that's a huge job in and of itself.
That is a huge job, and it's not to be just brushed aside, but that's not all they did. They were taking care of the men that were wounded and providing them, care. And sometimes these men were dying in whatever war situation it was, and that could be the last person they have to speak to. So that's a pretty heavy burden for someone to have. And just like we've talked about, I think before, with the whole gender roles, and genders tend to be more,
one way.
You have similar interests. Like, I'm more naturally maternal and soothing and comforting, and he's more disciplinary and strict and stern. So, for example, I don't think, if I was in his shoes when he was wounded, that I would want to wake up to another big burly man telling me to suck it up and get over it and get back out there on the field. You want that soothing motherly instinct. So the roles that women played in those stories were very, very important and crucial to how things played out. So just because they weren't on the front line doesn't mean they weren't respected, doesn't mean they weren't needed. And it doesn't mean that, you know, to make a game based on a certain aspect of it is to exclude a gender or a race. It's because that's the story that's being told.
Yeah.
I mean,
there are some other examples that I've seen recently. And the big thing that I've seen pushing back is that you cannot make history retroactively diverse. All right, history is what it is, period. I want my kids to learn history as it was, not how people want it to be or wished it was. You can't do that. History is history. If you're making something that is historically accurate, then it needs to be historically accurate. There's a popular video game Battlefield series that's coming out here soon. And Battlefield 5 is the next iteration that's coming out. And it's catching a lot of flack now, and people are yelling slurs at each other on both sides because they're supposed to, when they've made their previous games, they're supposed to be historically accurate. Okay, well, their main characters in the game, I think their main character that you're playing in this one, it's not confirmed yet, is a female who only has one arm. Okay. During World War II, do you think that a woman with a prosthetic arm would be on the front lines? My guess is going to be
nobody with a prosthetic arm would be on the front lines.
Now,
and I know that.
Does that mean that women didn't fight in World War II? No. There were a lot of women who fought in World War II, and when it came to fighting on the front lines, you need to look no further than Russia. Again, they had female snipers, they had female infantry, they had pretty much female everything, pilots, anything that you could have, because they needed the people.
They needed the numbers.
Yeah, they had to throw everyone they had against them. And there were many women who earned distinguished or earned medals for distinguished acts of valor against overwhelming odds, especially the snipers in the Battle of Stalingrad, that need to be honored for that. But to take a game and say it's historically accurate and we're going to empower women and look at this woman, she's so tough and she's slinging around with her one arm and she's gunning down all these Nazis. Now you're just being silly and you're insulting the real women who did give everything, who did sacrifice their lives on the altar of freedom so that their children could grow up free.
And you're insulting the women who, like I said, were serving in other roles, not necessarily on the front line, but in other supporting roles and major roles. You're making it seem like their jobs were not good enough, so you have to put them in these other roles because they weren't doing enough in the roles they were actually in. So it's insulting.
People don't realize that when it comes to a military and to an army, for every guy you've got on the front, you've got like 3 or 4 behind him in support roles, taking care of the bullets, beans, and bandages that you need. Women fill a lot of those roles. The guy at the front could not do his job if there weren't the people behind him. So it goes right along with what you're saying.
I don't know. It's not just, this isn't just like a male-female thing. It has to do with races and things like that as well. And I just don't understand how it can be offensive. It's history. It's not something that we had a hand in, or anyone else a game designer who's doing a historically accurate game isn't responsible for the story being told in that historically based game, because it's history. When we went to school, we were taught history. We were taught what happened. These events transpired. These people were involved. This is what happened. It doesn't mean that we agree with them. It doesn't mean you have to say, I support them or I agree with what they did. It's just telling the story. And there's that saying that if you don't, if you don't understand history or something, it's
those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, it's true. If you don't, you learn from your mistakes. That's part of what makes us, as adults or people, grow and learn. It's the same thing as nations and countries, and is learning from our past mistakes and past interactions is what helps us to learn and grow and make the positive progress and change.
And she's right. It's being done in more than just a gender basis. It's being done as far as race is concerned as well. Like when the movie Dunkirk came out, people attacked that. Good movie, true harrowing tale of hundreds of thousands of lives being saved because others were willing to risk their own. All right, the real short version of Dunkirk, if you're watching this channel, you should know it. But on the off chance that you don't, during World War II and the initial blitzkrieg into France, there was the British Expeditionary Force, and they got pushed back to the coast. And it was an evacuation to get troops off the coast back to Britain to be able to later fight the Nazis back. Churchill was hoping to get 30,000 of the guys off the beach. And they ended up rescuing over 300,000 because British citizens, men and women, all right, sailed their own ships down to the coast to get those guys off the coast. But the reason the movie was being attacked is it didn't have
any diversity, really.
Yeah, it didn't have any diversity. It was a bunch of white guys. Okay, why are you hating on that? It was a bunch of white guys.
That's the same thing as I was saying with like something that's relevant today with Obama, with him being our first, African American or black, whatever you want to call it, president. That was a huge thing in history, regardless of how you feel about him, whatever. That was a huge thing for everyone. I mean, for that culture, for the country, it was just a huge thing, and it will be a huge thing in our history 100 years from now, looking back. It'll be a huge moment. But if someone who was hateful or who was a racist decided, you know what, I don't like that that's the way things played out, no, and just decides to write that off and change it.
Or write Obama's a white guy.
Yeah, or, this past election make both candidates white male or both black males or whatever. When you start to change those things, it's not realistic. It changes everything. It makes it to where it doesn't matter anything about where you came from. It makes it to where you can even look at something like your resume and say, what's the point? If your history doesn't matter, and if you can just write any old thing you want and make it be anything that makes you happy, then what's the point of anything? You know what I mean?
Another good way to think about it, and a good example for, what I do here on this channel, is let's say someone was making a game about the Tuskegee Airmen, right? The group of black fighter pilots who fought in World War II, and they fought the Germans, and they ended up doing bomber escort missions, and they're the only bomber group that never lost a bomber to enemy fighter action. Only one that can claim it. All black. Awesome. Great. Nothing wrong with that. Hoorah to those guys. I mean, that's freaking outstanding. I would not want, any more than I want someone taking and changing other aspects of history to put people who weren't there in.
Yeah, to take and change that and make it a bunch of women.
That's the point I was going for. I wouldn't want people putting white guys in the Tuskegee Air Group when white guys weren't there. Now, yeah, they had a few select commanding officers that were white, but generally speaking, the Tuskegee Airmen were black.
Just, it doesn't matter if you make them men or whatever, to take and change it from anything other than what it was. That is worse than however they may have been treated. You know what I mean? Because they weren't treated the greatest. They weren't treated like equal. But that's a part of history. But that's where we've learned, because when he served, it didn't matter. Didn't matter your race, it didn't matter your sex, your religious views, did not matter. You were there, you were all in it together, and you knew that you would be willing to take a bullet for the guy next to you, and the same on either side. You were willing to step up and do what you need to do to make sure your brothers came home. No one cared about that. So,
and she's 100% right about that. The military definitely is diverse now. I have no idea what the racial statistics are in the military, and I don't give a crap.
Exactly.
My best friend on my last tour overseas was an Arabic guy, and we were in an Arabic. I was in Iraq, so. But we had Hispanic, we had white, we had black, we had Asian, we had every color under the sun.
And women.
And the funny part was, in the Marines, we're not the most
politically correct.
Yeah, I guess the way to put it. We rib each other. If you're in a dangerous situation, you're not worried about the little niceties. So we would rib each other hard, but I would have taken a bullet for any one of those guys, and they would have done the same for me. We didn't give a crap what the guy next to us looked like. His skin color didn't matter. We cared about the fact that he had the same uniform on that I did. And at the end of the day, he was either a light green or a dark green Marine, but he was still a Marine. He's still a brother. Yeah. Or a sister. We had women there as well.
And it's not that we're saying that it matters now that like, oh, well, it matters because you can't put women in something that there were only men because they're not good enough to do that. We're not, this isn't an issue because it truly matters on genders and like that they think this is better than this side or this race is better than this race. It's not about that. It's about that the people who genuinely play these games on a regular basis and have a love and a passion for them and who create them, they have a respect for the history of it. So to see it be almost attacked because people are saying it's not inclusive, it's just disrespectful to the people who lived through on all aspects of it. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and I just don't think it should be taken as offensive because certain people were in certain roles in history. That's history. We've learned and grown from that, and we're not gonna repeat it. So I see it being more damaging to change.
There are so many ways to make it diverse, though. It's not like it's not there. And I even did a research paper on this in college about black Confederates. Not a lot of them, but were there black guys that fought on the side of the Confederacy? Yeah, there were a few who were shooting at the Union troops. All right, so you can find diversity anywhere. If you want a game that has women in it in combat roles during World War II, you can have that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And you can have it be historically accurate. You can have people of all different races and ethnicities, genders, whatever you want in historically accurate games. But keep our games historically accurate. Don't claim that it's historically accurate and then change everything around to try to make it conform to today's standards. I'm going to say, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it, you cannot retroactively make history diverse. History is what history is. There's no changing it. There's just learning from it. Going on with our lives and learning from the mistakes of our forefathers.
If someone, like what happened with Germany and the Jews, horrific. I mean, that was horrible what happened and what the Jewish people went through and how they were treated and just the stories that you hear from people who survived it. It just is horrible. And so it wouldn't be fair for someone to say, I want to take and make it to where it was the, Jewish people that were the ones going in and attacking Germany and taking, it's just, it doesn't matter what you apply it to. Any major thing in history, if you take and you try to change it out and say, well, no, we wish that these people would have been here because that's equal and fair, then it's not history. Then we would have no starting off point of why we've changed, why we've grown. It just... You
can take and if you want to make a non-historical game, you can put whatever you want.
Yeah, we play Shadows of Brimstone. There's men and women in it and all different races and monsters and aliens and bullets and
your favorite character was the dancing chick, right? Like,
I don't remember.
I think the saloon girl. Yeah, because you started off with your special little pistol and everything. Yeah, if you want to make a non-historical game, you can. There's no problem with it. You can put whatever you want.
But it's not a historically accurate game at that point. It's just like a movie where it's based on a true story or it's based on true events. That means, hey, something roughly like this happened, but we've changed it to please you or to entertain you or to scare you or whatever it may be. But that is not a historically accurate movie. The ones who say based on a true story and true events are taking what happened and putting it on the screen. It is the same exact thing for games, so it shouldn't be taken offensively. If it's not taken offensively on the big screen, I don't understand how it could be taken offensively for games, because it's the same exact thing as that.
One last little thing that you reminded me of that I'm going to touch on before we cut this is speaking about people taking things offensively is things like the Confederate flag in Civil War games or the Nazi swastika in World War II games. Those symbols do bother certain people, but they were a part of history. That's the thing. I can get how certain people wouldn't want to see whatever symbol that you're speaking of, not just those two, but those two as examples. But you can't just erase them from history. I don't want my kids getting this watered down version to where they don't know what really happened one day because people have changed the facts of what really happened to make things seem more politically correct now. That's not doing ourselves any favors, and it's definitely not doing our kids any favors.
All it's telling them is it's setting them up to make the same mistakes that were made in the past. It's setting them up for another Nazi Germany to happen. It's setting them up for all these things that have happened in the past that we don't agree with today. And basically saying, well, it didn't happen, so we didn't learn from it. So all of the knowledge and things that we've learned from it out the window means someone else can rise up and do that same thing again. Like it really is, more damaging.
I was just thinking about it, and what I think you can really come down to on all of this is those damn participation trophies from back in the day when they started giving kids participation trophies just for showing up.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you started having it to where everybody felt they needed to be included.
Well, apparently now I saw something on Facebook earlier, just to go on that for a quick little tangent. Apparently now everybody's kids should be forced to play with everybody's kids. Like your kid can't experience rejection or loss as far as playing games or whatever because it upsets them. And that's just not reality. So changing history is just furthering that whole notion of we don't want anything negative to ever happen to our children. And I don't mean them getting sick or hurt. Obviously, we protect our children. But I mean, they're going to experience sadness and, anger. Things are not always going to go their way. And we've learned to accept that and that we can make a difference and make changes so that our life goes in a different way. But we know that because of what happened in history.
Just one last little thought on it, take and keep pushing developers and publishers to take and stick with historical accuracy for the board games. If they're making a non-historical accurate game, I've got plenty of what-if scenarios or, things that are set in the future, past, the alternate histories, anything like that. It's fair game.
But if you're trying to tell a story, let them just tell the story that they're telling, that the story that happened.
Yeah. But if you're trying for historical accuracy in the games, you've got to have historical accuracy. It doesn't matter who was there. You represent who actually fought. Because if you don't, you're insulting the ones that were there, weren't there, supported, the families, the whole thing. You've got to stick with what was. The truth is the important factor of it, right? All right, that's going to be it. We're going to cut this one on that. I hope you guys enjoyed our little rant. Feel free to leave comments down below about your thoughts.
Real quick, the last video that we did, there was a lot of different opinions in the comments, which was fine. We said that we were open to conversations, and as long as it doesn't get hateful or angry or violent, that's fine. If you agree, disagree, whatever, leave it in the comments. We're happy to hear you, discuss. We're definitely open-minded people that like to hear the other side and hear other people's views on things because that's what makes the world go round.
That's going to be it for us. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Y'all take care.
Bye.
We'll see you in the next one.